Welcome to the Better Outcomes podcast, where we discuss all things leadership, sales, and communication in Australian business. At Better Outcomes Training, we provide world-class training solutions for businesses who want to arm their teams with cutting-edge skills to lead better, sell better, and enjoy more success, purpose, and profit from the work they do. For a full breakdown of all the courses we offer, visit www.better-outcomes.com.au. There's also a link in the description. Now, on to today's podcast. Enjoy.
Welcome back, everyone. Another episode, Better Outcomes Training Podcast. I'm Craig. I'm sounding a bit rough. Throat's a bit rough. We'll get to that later. Sitting opposite me, nodding, smiling away as usual, electrifying selves, Paul Harrison. Paulie, how are you?
Absolutely. Took the words right out of my mouth, cuz. Absolutely electrifying. Gotcha. The words we use dictate how we think, so let's start with something positive. What can I say? It's all good. All good in the hood, my man.
Good to hear. Good to hear. I have to apologise. I've got a bit of a throat thing going on. I got it's not the flu. I got a little bit carried away back at jiu-jitsu and got choked, for want of a better word, by a good friend of ours, who decided it would be a good idea to not use his arm to choke me, but his shin bone across my throat. And I was giggling at the time, so my Adam's apple took a fair old bit of punishment. So I'm sounding a bit rough, but I honestly haven't had a big night. I've got a cup of tea here with honey in it.
Cup of tea? Yes. You must be over 50, cuz. You must be
I'm well over 50 now, mate. I'm firing down the other side of that 50 hill like a rocket. But we'll try and get through. Hopefully it doesn't break, and we should be good. Now, Paulie, you've had a big week training people again, and that's what I want to talk to you about today.
Yes.
And specifically about all around the return on investment that you want to get from training employees or training yourself. How do you go about it? How do you get the best return on investment?
Yeah.
For obviously your time and money that you're spending. Yeah. And a few other things to look for and think about when you're choosing your training.
Okay, so we're talking about this from a sort of head of HR, head of people and culture, or learning and development, somebody who's making a decision as to how to get the most out of the training. Is that right?
Precisely. Okay. And as well, also, if you're doing it off your own back, if you're looking for some personal development, like if you want some improve your personal self-esteem, your professional self-esteem, we'll have a look at it from terms of that as well. But I think it's probably better if we do what you said and look at it in terms of HR, because then it will feed off the back of that onto some.
Sure, absolutely. We can cover off both, because from working with me and what have you, it's like it's one thing to give good guidance with regards to how to best select a course, but also really how to be able to make the training stick, which is crucial as well. So yeah, exactly,
and it can be. I guess it's there's a lot of it to do there with finding the right fit for not only people but experience, the facilitator, what kind of programs. So there's a fair bit going on to think about.
Yeah,
and it can be quite a bit of cost, both in time and money.
Yeah.
So you want to try and get it right. Now, I'm a babe in the woods when it comes to this. You're the experienced bloke, so I'm going to try and feed off you here on this one. And I think probably one of the best places to start is why do people or companies and people invest in training? What are the reasons why you would bother?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a good question, cuz, and it's a question I think that a lot of businesses, particularly businesses who provide training, would do really well to think into research and to ask their clients. I think from my research and from the research I've been able to develop is that there's a number of different factors that people do training. I think firstly, the obvious one, I'm hoping, would be to help their team, so their staff, get better results in the workplace environment. To really be able to upskill them. And I think that the classic example here is maybe somebody who knows they could get better results or better outcomes when it comes to their whatever their role is. They could go to training to learn some new techniques. But a big one that stands out, and one that we get approached a lot over, is working with emerging leaders. So people who were, to use sort of the trade terminology, we're on the tools, and some clients you and I have worked with as well, people on the tools, and now they're taking that next step up, and it's like, okay, I was frontline, but now I've got to start managing a team of frontline. And that's a big area, because it's like, okay, we've got an entire team here which is taking the next step up. A lot of big businesses, and some of the small niche businesses do the same thing as well. But that's a huge area, particularly from a confidence point of view and developing leadership skills. That's a big thing, to be able to help people achieve those, the skill sets to take that next step up. So I think that's a big one, to develop those new skills to support them in the next step. And I think that leadership scenario is quite a classic example. I'm a huge believer in just always wanting to do my own personal and professional development as well. And I believe that, the clients that I work with, a lot of them have developed very much a growth mindset. So they're always keen to learn. They're always hungry to learn. And it's actually part of what they do on a regular basis. So there's another group of people who maybe their businesses invest in them because they want them to be the best at what they do. The absolute best of what they do, and really refine those skill sets and become the best of what they do in their field. So I think those are two big things. Firstly, to upskill them in emerging leadership positions. Also, then something like selling in a competitive marketplace. Selling is where you see the best possible return on investment, and I think that's a big thing to discuss, because to your point, it's not cheap to invest in training. But to develop sales teams that can, get that earned advantage over their competitors on the regular. So I think that's a very good investment of finances, if the trainers can then get you that return, which I think is a big thing. I think also getting people to come together off site, or in a different environment, and start learning the same strategies together is a big one. So if you have a team who are together, they're starting to learn the same, they're starting to use the same terminology, think along the same lines, and very often you can get a more harmonious type of approach for the training as well. So, if everybody's sort of using the same language, are starting to think in a similar way, they can often work like, high-performing teams. From starting to build those high-performing teams, very often that could be a big thing. You get that group training, all using the same terminology, all thinking very similar. Doesn't mean that you create siloed, between the other departments, but it certainly means that you get that team working as a more aligned unit, and that can be fantastic. And really, it's beautiful to see that progression. Now, I think another big reason is very often there are businesses who see that training is a unique selling point, and I think certainly in the Australian market, it's very much an employees market, in my opinion. And what I mean by that is, if you're highly skilled, there's a lot of people who are willing to pay for you to be in that particular role, particularly if your role and your position will actually add value. And I think there's a lot of businesses, certainly a lot of businesses I work with, who've got the thought processes. If we invest and we provide maybe 2 or 3 days of training per year per person, that's going to keep and retain. It's going to attract and retain the real growth mindset type people, which I think is a real unique selling point. What attracts people to a role? I think a lot of the time people think, oh, it's salary, and salary would be an attraction, but I think there's other aspects as well. And I think that if you're able to tell me as a potential employer that you are dedicated to my growth, my development, and that's why you give me 3 days of professional development a year, that's that would get me thinking I'm going to go and work with a culture that I'm really going to enjoy.
Precisely, and especially when those are skills that you have for life. If you're not only going to pay me and pay me to go and do it, I get to keep those forever, no matter where I go.
Absolutely.
I guess one thing I thought about was that it's the old catch-22 for some businesses. We've spoken about this before. Like, why would I not so much waste money, but why would I train people? What happens if they leave? Yeah. Well, and then you turn around to me and say, well, what happens if you don't train them and they stay?
Yeah.
And you've got that balance as well. That bit of dichotomy going on of that. But when you spoke about high performing teams, and how if you get a company or a section of the company or whatever to start all thinking with new strategies and techniques together, and you said how they start to work together more harmoniously and whatnot. I think there's also, it creates an environment where they can start to feed off each other with all these
Absolutely,
learnings.
100%.
So when you're around, and I think it would drag others up as well, where if you're around that kind of environment where these people are starting to learn these new techniques and starting to move in different ways, it kind of sucks you up as well.
Yeah.
Because if you're that way inclined and you've got a bit of a growth mindset going on, you're like, hey, I want to be a part of this. This sounds good. So it can be really quite motivating for the whole company.
100%, 100%. Because I'll build on this, and this certainly from a sports analogy as well, but certainly within teams and teams you've worked with as well, you've told me about, and certainly teams I've trained, but teams I've worked with as well, is winning as a culture. We all like to be a part of a winning team, and winning teams, it's a culture. It's a culture. It's a culture that's formulated between the people that come together and the best practices that are integrated and part of what we do and how we do it.
Yeah.
And that's always something I'm looking when I'm working with a team, is how do we start building that high performing culture? Because it's like an addiction. It becomes part of your culture, your DNA, the work you do. Your colleagues become your brothers and sisters, and we're all moving in this direction. I know it sounds like a utopia, but a lot of the time when I've worked with teams like that or built teams like that, very often it's something people start taking a lot more positivity from the work they do as well.
Yeah.
And when you're part of a winning team, I think there's less interpersonal conflicts as well. I really believe it. I see so much interpersonal conflict in the workplace environment. There's obviously a lot of reasons for it, hell of a lot of reasons. But I think sometimes those reasons, those problems and those conflicts come from people's own insecurities that then are projected to other people. And I think what can happen is, often if you overcome that and you start creating that culture of winning, and I'm not just talking about highfalutin, I'm talking about outputs, the results, the outcomes are better. You start getting people into what I'm going to refer to as a positive upward spiral. And a lot of those internal insecurities that people hold on an individual basis can become less impactful on the team, which is a absolutely beautiful place to be. If we work as adults for 30% of our adult life, I want to be part of a team that's winning. But the thing is that I know I have a big role to play in that as well as a team member. So it's just not. I don't expect senior management just to build it for me, but if we can create that, then that's absolutely awesome.
Exactly. And just quickly, further to your point about how it can be quite an attractive bonus, so to speak, to come to get headhunted to a company or to start with a company that does training. It can also help with staff retention.
Massively.
Absolutely. It can work both ways. So you may not lose a lot of staff, because if they're quite happy to stay here, if they're getting trained and move forward and they've got that mindset, why would you go somewhere else?
Absolutely. And here's the other thing as well, and I think a lot of employers don't realize this, but if somebody's looking to shift, they're looking to move somewhere else, there's the difference between, there's always uncertainty with regards to moving. And what I mean by that is, if I'm in a job, maybe there's things I'm not overly happy about in that job. But if I move to another company that's headhunted me and maybe give me an extra 20, 25% or whatever it is, and I'm just pulling those numbers out the air. But there's a degree of uncertainty there as well. And particularly if you've been headhunted before, if you've moved from one business to another business, that it's, I'm not going to say people are misleading, but from time to time, it's not exactly what you expected. Yeah, you got the increase because you got a reputation or what have you. But often you land into a situation, it's like, okay, well, I thought it was going to be different to this. But anyway, so there is often that apprehension, and the apprehension of the person that's moving. If it's just about the salary, then that can often be overcome by certain other means there as well.
That's right. We've actually spoken about this, about how you can get out of certain situations. You find yourself dead-ended in your career when you're out of options. So training can get you out of this.
Yeah.
If the company, if you're looking to move because you think you're out of options, and you tell the company that, it may be a simple case if they send you on some trainings to open up another position, another way, another path for you. So there's that way of looking at it as well.
Absolutely, absolutely, and then it's a company that says that shows you that we're investing in you. It's not just we're saying we take our team seriously and we value you and stuff like that. It's like they're actually investing in you, and that's a message I push as well a lot. I say I push is that I make attendees to my training very, very aware that they're seen as assets to their business. And the reason I know that is because they're being invested in, and it's not cheap. It's not cheap to get a trainer onto your campus or a trainer onto your, to your workshops or what have you. You're looking a significant amount of money. I think that a lot of the time, us facilitators, there's a responsibility for us to make sure that we reinforce that point, that the company sees the attendees as an asset or as assets to the business. And I think that certainly it nicely picks it up and sort of keeps that morale, gives them morale, a little bit of a boost there as well, which is nice, And I think that the aspect then the clients are just looking for is making sure that they can get some degree of good ROI.
Yeah, exactly. So on the back of that, what should we be looking for when we're looking to choose some trainings to invest in? And I mean, everything from who the provider is, what kind of programs you're looking to run or to look to train your staff in, but also, I guess, the basic ones, which are what kind of outcomes I'm after, or even on the back of that, if you're doing it personally for yourself, if you've managed to identify stuff that you're lacking, that you need, maybe you want to be a leader, or your company wants you to be a leader, and you're lacking in certain skills. So what are we looking for, and what are we looking for in that kind of training?
Yeah, good question. So it's interesting. Whenever a client reaches out and says, listen, we want to do some training for the team, there's two questions I'll always start with. And those two questions are, firstly, the first question is, what motivated this desire for the training? So what was the actual, what was the genesis, if I can use a highly intelligent word there. Is it genesis in the beginning? What was the reason why that there was motivation for this change? Okay. And the reason I ask that question is it starts setting a lot of context with regards to exactly, what happened around that table when one person said to another person, we need to get some training in, because that gives me a real idea, firstly, where the target audience is coming from and what are some of their challenges. And, that could be the answer I can often get from that is something as simple as, well, we've got 6 figures every year that we invest into our training budget. We mark sort of our team members, certain team members that we want to get onto training, just as part of their professional development. And it's just something we go through the process. And that's fine. That's fine. We can deal with that as well. But when I'm dealing with situations where often you will get things like customer experience surveys. You'll get these customer experiences, and the customer experience surveys have been very, very low. And the board sees this and thinks, what the hell's going on here? We need to train the team to be able to start dealing with customers a whole lot better. So that could be the origin of it. Other times I've had this is there's become a realization, and this was a recent conversation I had. I couldn't believe this conversation. Anyway, I'm not going to go into too much detail on this, but there was a well-known company I was talking to who were doing a lot of retail business, and they said that their salespeople were being beaten up on the price, their price point. They've got quite an established name in the market, they were being the negotiators. So from the client's point of view, were dropping prices way too quickly. They weren't being able to build that value, and it was seeing that the market conditions have changed. And because, during COVID, everybody was buying because everybody was locked up. So, retail was a big thing. And people had maybe a little bit of extra money there as well. But then the other side was, it's like, okay, well, now the market conditions have changed. And now we see that's hit our bottom line. So it's like, okay, what's the problem here? And we'll go into that as well. So the first thing is what was the origin of this demand? Where did this demand come from? That's the very first thing I've got to ask. And often I'm getting some insight there. Often it's a question that maybe the people I'm talking to don't have an accurate answer for me. And if I don't think that the answer is reflective and it's giving me enough information for me to be able to really help them, I'll say, listen, we can it's probably unfair me asking you these questions, but maybe there's some other people we can get involved in this as well, because otherwise, we're just going through the motions of this.
Yeah.
So that'd be the first question.
Do you ever find that they're after the wrong kind of training when you ask that question? Because that question you ask, it sounds very similar to me when you're looking for discovery in sales.
Yeah.
In terms of maybe the person wants something and there's something else that will suit them better. So you ask that simple discovery question. Is that what you're looking for?
That would normally come through more in the second question.
Okay.
But what I will tell you is this. I've found before that there have been clients who've approached me because they want some particular training, and we'll go with maybe sales training, and they want to learn. They want to get systems and procedures taught to their sales teams to be able to convert more business. But what the people I'm talking to in the client side doesn't realize is that they, as leaders, need to be able to set a system and procedure. So what I mean by that is, if there is a inquiry comes in and then the salesperson picks up the phone and makes a call and goes through a script and then closes and then follows up and closes again, there's an internal system that needs to be built by the business. Now, what I have found from time to time is that you have maybe, for whatever reason, some management that is being given a particular task of managing a team, but they're out of their depth, completely out of their depth. So they're thinking, you know what we'll do? We'll get a trainer in here to provide some training, because that should be able to improve the situation. Now I know I'm going into the minuscule details here, but I can go in and teach skill sets. I can even come in, I can see, I can teach skill sets, and that's normally what we're teaching. If I need to teach a system or a procedure, I need to come in and see what your whole system and procedure is at the moment. Then I can write out scripts and sequences and stuff like that, and then teach them. But I've seen people where they have not had the skill sets in leadership to be able to set the infrastructures. So they think that skills training is going to be able to cover up for, a lack of infrastructure. And I'm being very direct now with what I'm saying here. And trying to get that message across often can be a challenge. So that's what I have seen. And I've said it before, that I've actually walked away from a client before where they've said that they want a system and procedure written out and the team trained on it. And they couldn't get the point that what I'm saying is, I don't know your systems and procedures. Within each business, your systems and procedures changes. Now I can come in and charge you for a day of consultancy, and then a day of design work, and then come back and deliver a day of training on your new system and procedure that I can design for you. But unless there is the management skills to be able to develop the infrastructure first, then it's going to be very difficult you can have the best skill sets in the world, but if you don't have the infrastructure to be able to to build those skill sets around, it's going to be pretty tough.
Yeah.
So that comes up from time to time. So especially when I ask, what motivated this whole desire for trading, that's the first thing. And second question I ask is, what is the specific outcomes you want your team to have when they leave the room? So we have a 2-day training, 3-day training. We've got a 3-day training coming up in Sydney next week, actually. And it's, asking that question, what is the outcome that you want for your team to have at the end of those 2 days or those 3 days? And that's also very often, it's not an easy question for people to take on. And, I do pre-frame what I'm saying with regards to, folks, these questions, I know they're not easy questions. I live and breathe this. I do this every day. And I know they're not easy questions, but the reason I'm asking is because really I want to make sure I can fit some, I can provide some training for you that doesn't only meet expectations, but absolutely exceeds them. And if I understand what those outcomes are, then we can start reverse engineering the whole approach. Because again, a lot of the time people want better results. And that's what they're after, but they are trying to address symptoms of a deeper problem, which I very often find when I get in the room, which is quite interesting. So as a facilitator, and I know a lot of other facilitators will be listening to this as well, we have to be able to adapt on the day as well. So we have to have that flexibility to deal with exactly what those challenges are.
Yeah, that's right. While we're on facilitators, what should you be looking for in a facilitator? What are some of the key things that you obviously you personally do, but also what you think should be delivered or what you should get from a facilitator, because that's probably one of the biggest parts of training. That's apart from what's getting taught and the outcomes you want. One of the big aspects is actually getting a good facilitator, getting a good trainer in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm probably very, very biased in what I'm about to say now, but I believe that a facilitator will make or break the content. So the facilitator, you can give two facilitators exactly the same content, and they will get two completely different feedbacks from the clients at the end of the day. Now, if I'm going out looking to recruit let's say I'm the head of learning and development for a business, and I'm looking to go and recruit a facilitator to do training on this, or a company to do training on this, I want to make sure that firstly I have a very, very, very credible and capable facilitator. And that might sound like, yeah, obviously, Paul, obviously. Tell me something I don't know, and that's probably a good estimation. But here's the thing: is facilitators, like anything, like any industry, they're not all born the same. They're not all the same. So what I would be looking for firstly is a provable track record, and every facilitator should have a track record. So there are a lot of these big RTOs, registered training organizations, that will employ facilitators, and they'll have an idea of the kind of feedbacks that each facilitator gets. So they will know if I go and run a particular course, clients will always provide feedback. So there's a feedback form at the end of the training, so that those registered training organizations, they know who they're going to pair up into what workshops you're firstly capable of delivering, and secondly happy to deliver, but thirdly, most importantly, that you get the best results for it. You get the best results for the client. So the first thing I'm looking for is, what is your track record? Show me that you have a track record. Particularly, show me a track record that would put you in a good position. It's not just a one size fits all. Second thing I'm going to say is they have to be taken seriously by your audience. Now, if you looked at let's say the top 1% of facilitators in the country, and I don't know how many facilitators there are in Australia, corporate training facilitators. I know some of the bigger RTOs might have up to maybe 300 facilitators. So let's double it. Let's say 600 facilitators in Australia. If you take the top 1% of that, you're dealing with 60 people. Now, those 60 facilitators will all have provable track records, all be very, very, very good. The thing is, though, is you will find you want to make sure that you can match your facilitator with your target audience. So a lot of business that I pick up, and you're across this as well, you're familiar with this, is that I'm able to go and train where a lot of other people are not able to go and train. And what I mean by that is, I've done a lot of courses where maybe there's been quite confrontational audiences. Very often there are audiences that will maybe look at me and they can identify maybe with me to some degree as well. And then there'll be some audiences you put me in front of, and it's just like, who the hell is this? They'll have a negative knee-jerk reaction. On this is not my person. This is not my person. And it's so really being able to read the room is a big one for you on that as well, and knowing who your audience, who your presenter or your facilitator is going to be to be able to match the room. Now, again, I think that maybe I'm being a bit unfair with that, because the top 1% of facilitators should be able to deliver across all of those, different target audiences and what have you. And they should all be able to get good outcomes. But what I'm really looking for, what I would advise anybody who's looking to invest that money and the time into this, is you don't just want good, you want the best. So my suggestion would be looking at this person, speaking to this person, how they think, how they operate, how they carry themselves, how they project, all of these things. Would that match my target audience? Would that work well for my target audience? Because ultimately, from a facilitator's point of view, and I hope I speak for all facilitators out there, I'm sure I don't, but there we go. I hope I do. That the thing is we want to make sure the clients get, world-class outcomes. So there have been businesses in the past that I've been approached to do some work with. And I've just said to either the promoter or whoever was organizing, I said, listen, I really appreciate that you've come to me to ask me to do this, but I really don't think I'm going to be a good match for this client. I really don't think so. And I don't want there to be, I'd rather somebody else takes the work and they're a great fit rather than me who, some of the audience might not, they might not connect with me as well as maybe what some other audiences might do. So I think that would be a big thing. So provable track record, I think, is crucial. I think the ability to match your audience is crucial as well. Another one I think is very, very important here is the ability to have experience in that particular market. Now, I think last year I worked with like 26 different business sectors. I haven't worked on the front lines in 26 business sectors, but I've been doing training since 2009. So I've had a lot of experience. I know their terminology and stuff like that. But if I work in things like financial services, which I've worked in, hospitality, which I've worked in, education, which I've worked in, e-commerce, which I've worked in, legal, which I've worked in to a high degree, compliance, which I've worked in a high degree. Those are sort of some degree of lived experiences. So this is a nice to have. Construction and the trade industries I've worked a fair amount in. Obviously, you do a lot of work with yourself as well, and that gives me sort of a little bit more credibility, I think, when being able to relay my stories or those stories in my target audience's context as well. Yeah. And I think that's a real nice thing to have. If you can have that, I think that will really add to the credibility of what you say and how you say it as well, and how receptive the audience is to you as well.
Exactly. So I learned most from people who've lived walked the path.
Yeah.
So to speak. Yeah. So I'd be looking for someone who's either very experienced, so has a fair, like you said, a fair track record, has done this for a while, so I know they can cover off their bases. Or I'd be looking for someone who specifically has done what I'm looking for, who has walked that path. And as for being relatable and being able to get your message across, I'll tell you one that quite a long time ago, I did my Cert 4 in building and construction. Yep. And to set the scene, it was after hours. It was during winter. It was after hours. It was from like, I think it was like 5:30 or 6 o'clock till about 9 o'clock, a couple of nights a week. And it was really cool. We were in this warm room, and we had a guy called Alex. He took us for estimating. Alex had actually written his own estimating program, and actually sat down, gone for his builder's license, and sat down with the Builders Association and defended it against them, which was very hard to do at the time because they wanted you to buy these $10,000, $25,000 estimating programs. So when it came to estimating, his eyes would light up.
Wow.
And it was his passion, and he was into it. And it was learning off him. He taught me so much. It was fantastic. It really was. And it was like maybe a couple of weeks with him. And then we moved on to occ health and safety, which is the most stimulating topic in the world. But the bloke who was supposed to take us, the person who was supposed to take us for occ health and safety was actually off crook. So Alex did the right thing and said, look, I'll take it for you. But he had no idea about the content.
Yes. Wow.
So we're sat in this room, all tired after a long day, half tradies, few office guys, and Alex was up there talking like this about and he did his best, but it was monotone. He was reading off the thing, and we were all lights out. It's occ health and safety, so it goes in one ear with me and out the other most of the time anyway. Not much sticks, but if you've got someone who's really into it, who's quite passionate about it, and you can tell that in their presentation, you take a lot more away from it.
Passion is so contagious. It really is. It's so beautiful to, it's beautiful to see somebody doing something that they're really passionate about. Even if it's like the other day, I went into the coffee shop the other day, and I sat down having a coffee, just reflect. I was just happy about something, having a blueberry muffin. And there was this lady sitting there. This lady sitting there about 2 or 3 tables over, and she was writing. She was writing in like an A4 notebook, and she had like a pen, and she was writing, and she was so in the moment. And I don't know if she was like a novelist or something, or writing poetry or something, but she was so in the moment. It was such a beautiful energy that she had in that moment. It was like, when you see people talking and facilitating about something they're passionate about, like your mate there, it really becomes contagious, and I think they absolutely bring it to life. I really agree with that, man. And it's beautiful to be around. It's beautiful to see it. It's beautiful to be a part of as well.
That's right. And I guess that brings me on to one little thing that you talk about it a little bit. I'd like you to explain it, where I guess Alex did it in a way with the occupational health and safety section, where it was just an information exchange. He was literally just giving us the info. There was not really anything behind it.
Yeah.
Whereas you talk about behavioral change. I think it's behavioral change, where when you go into you're looking to change my behaviors and get those aha moments out of people. So talk to me about that. Talk to me about information exchange versus behavioral change.
Yeah. Well, this is something I talk about at the beginning of any workshop I run, which is, and I mean this from the deepest part of my heart, is the only thing that matters to me for a client is that they get better outcomes as a result of our time together. They've invested time to be there. They're busy people, and I want to make sure that they get a return on their time invested. That is my Everest. It really is, man. It's like, that's the reason the Aussie government have allowed me to stay and what have you. As long as I keep supporting Australian business people, it's like, it's all good, And that's my motivating factor. That's my North Star, to work towards getting better outcomes. So my thought process for this is that people come to training because they want to get better outcomes. That's my story I tell myself. They're coming to training because at work they're currently not getting a particular outcome they're after. So very often people come to the training, they come to the workshop, and what they're after is strategies, techniques, understandings, that type of thing. And I ask this question. I actually draw it up as 3 circles. So the circle on my right is the better outcomes. That's the O/C, the outcomes that they get. And before that, there's an arrow leading to the OC, and that is STU, so strategies, techniques, and understandings.
Yeah.
So very often people will come to a workshop because they think they want to learn strategies, techniques, and understandings. And I say to them, how many of you would be happy to take strategies, techniques, and understandings from this workshop? And every hand goes up, okay? And then I'll say to them, that is not what would make me happy, okay? Because my goal is not just to give you strategies, techniques, and understandings. I want to create better outcomes. So effectively, and this is where the whole name of the business came from. So I can give you strategies, techniques, and understandings. Any other facilitator or trainer can give you strategies, techniques, and understandings. A book can give you strategies, techniques, and understandings. But that's what I refer to as information exchange. So I can give you that information, but a book can give you the information. A PowerPoint can give you the information. So what I'm looking to do is not just create information exchange. I want to do something different. I want to do what you said, create behavioral change. And I make this little joke. I say to people, how many of you would like a strategy, technique, and understanding to make millions in the stock market? And every hand goes up, or most hands go up. If it's just one person, I'll walk over and I whisper to them. But I said, here's the strategy. The strategy to make millions in the stock market is buy low and sell high. And of course, everybody laughs at that because they kind of get the point. Having that information is not enough. Yes, it's a good start, and it means you're not going to go the wrong direction. It doesn't mean you're going to get those better outcomes. So then what I'll do is I'll draw a 3rd circle on the left-hand side, and I'll say, in order for me to create behavioral change, and the arrow now will go from the 1st circle to the 2nd circle to the 3rd circle, something has to happen in this first bubble here, and I'll say, in order for me to support you to get behavioral change rather than just information exchange, something has to happen in this first bubble. And then I'll say, I want to make sure it is behavioral change, not just information exchange, because if you keep doing what you've always done, you get what you've always got. And this, my friends, is exactly why human beings often come to training and they snap back to old behaviors over the next 2 or 3 weeks. So they come away from the training, learn new stuff, but then they snap back to old behaviors because it's information exchange, not behavioral change. So then I'll say to people, what has to happen in that first bubble so that you can utilize those strategies, techniques, and understandings to get those better outcomes? And the answer to that is there has to be mindset shifts. And then I'll say along the lines of, if you've just subconsciously rolled your eyes when I said you need to shift mindset, I agree with you, because there are so many people in my industry who talk about mindset, and they'll say things like just be more confident or be in a better mindset. And that to me is what I call TBU, which is true but useless. Okay. And so what I have to be able to do as a facilitator is I have to create mindset shifts. I have to create paradigm shifts. I have to reframe. I have to weaken limiting beliefs. All of these things that people hold, because if that mindset doesn't change, those strategies, techniques, and understandings are for nothing. So I say to them as well, how I go about creating that mindset shift, I could take you on a 5-day boot camp and explain to you exactly how I do it. Unfortunately, though, it's very rare I have 5 days of people, and when I do, it's got to be other things we're going to talk about. So what I do is I ask them just to be noticing when they have mindset shifts, and I ask, what physiological reaction or mental reaction do you think you would have when you have a mindset shift around something? And a lot of the time, the answer will be, it's like a light bulb moment or an aha moment. And that's what I get people watching for. I get them watching for those aha moments. It's like, that's where I've been going wrong. I've been 95% there with that particular challenge. And they're thinking about everything I'm teaching them in their context. And it's like, if that's that 5% little shift, that tiny little 5% shift. If we can make that 5% shift, then we're going to be in a much better position to get those much better outcomes.
Yeah, precisely. I've seen those aha moments pop up.
Yeah.
It's amazing to watch.
It's beautiful to be a part of. It really is. It's beautiful to be a part of.
The thing that most impresses me is when it can be put into context.
Yeah.
Like, it makes it very relatable to me.
Yeah.
Though, you can put it in nearly any situation you want and talk about it in general terms, but if the facilitator can break it down, and not only break it down step by step, but step by step that I can use in a situation that I've experienced or a situation that I've been through or might be looking at as well.
Yeah.
So you can actually sit there and relate it to, geez, if I'd have done this, and what would the outcome? Wouldn't have been the same outcome. Not saying it turned into a good outcome, but I would have got a different outcome than what I've been getting all the time.
100%.
So it's just that little sideways shift, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the art forms that the great facilitators can do, is they can assess very early or get closer to understanding somebody else's context. Because if I can understand your context and I can deliver a learning in your context, that's when we start getting breakthroughs. If I talk to you about something, about a concept that's way outside your context, it's not even part of your life. Yeah. You're going to start thinking about what you're having for dinner, what's happening over the weekend. It's not going to be relevant to you. So you are so smashed. It's so perfectly right on that, mate. I got to try and figure out, a great facilitator got to try and figure out exactly what's going on with this person's view of the world and how they think, what's important to them, and then keep relaying those things back. Keep relaying them back to that person's context. And it's something I put a hell of a lot of work into, and it is tiring, and I come away from these workshops broken. We've worked together before, we've seen this, but it's the juice is absolutely worth the squeeze. Is when you see people get that breakthrough because you've been able to facilitate it to their view of the world. You know that you've just helped reduce their stress levels to some degree, because they've been worrying about this problem. How do they deal with it? How do they deal with it? And they realize they were 95% of the way there. And it's like, bang, we're through it, which is just awesome. It really is. That's
right. And thinking about it like that too, we've talked about this in the past about how people can find themselves in situations where they don't think they belong, and which is kind of like the old imposter syndrome kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where maybe they're actually sitting at the training, they don't think they belong there. If your facilitators doesn't pick up on that or doesn't provide the content correctly, it can be very easy to become overwhelmed.
Absolutely, 100%.
And you all of a sudden they're talking about things that you don't think you're supposed to be there. B, he's talking about things I don't understand or I can't relate to.
Yeah,
I'm not going to learn much.
Absolutely.
I guess keeping it simple and making sure that it like you said, it's relatable. You keep coming back to the main topic, branching off, then it stops people from getting overwhelmed.
Absolutely. And your examples need to be, depending on your audience, they need to be quite generic to start with. So a lot of examples, depending on my audience. And again, if I'm dealing with an audience, if I've got 20 people in the room, they all come from different sectors, then I have to keep my examples quite generic and broad to things that everybody would understand. And I mean, this would happen even if I'm training with a business, because I've got people from accounting, I've got people from, marketing, from HR. So I would still have to keep that quite generic. But if I'm working with a leadership team, I can go into a lot more detail on, one specific area, on those specific areas. So, because leadership would be very people focused, and people behavior can vary a little bit, but I think that people would normally get sort of dealing with a resistor. How do we deal with this? And, we can go through a number of different approaches there as well.
Yeah, especially if it's something new. So if you give quite generic, and I would suggest simple kind of example, easy for everyone to pick up on, and then then they might be able to, okay, I get what he's saying, kind of start, they can, relate it back to yourself. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
You know what else is a beautiful thing for training, mate? Absolutely beautiful, is the ability to illustrate a concept through stories. If you can illustrate the ability to influence and persuade through going and buying a secondhand car. Folks, if you've been with me on Influence and Persuasion, you know what I'm talking about now. But the ability to tell a story to illustrate your point. So you set out the concepts and in terminology that people are comfortable with, they're familiar with, and it's like, okay, this is the outcome we're going to help you with, and breaking down all of these steps. And then you can utilize that whole process as part of a story. Particularly if everybody likes a story, man. Everybody enjoys a good story, and it's when you can deliver that in a way, and people can visualize the whole thing. You make it entertaining, you make it funny, people enjoy it, and people won't forget that. They really won't. And then they get the concept that you've got, they get the steps that you've got, and they remember that story, and people won't forget that. And it's so beautiful. I can teach a concept linear and structured, which is great. But when you can not just do that, but then you can relate in a story that people can relate, and they can visualize themselves in that situation, they're going to retain that a whole lot more. They're going to feel comfortable with it as well.
Absolutely. Getting people comfortable, relaxed, just like a big sponge, man. Pump the info, man.
Yeah.
Some good stuff there. So what about after training? You've been through this, you've sat down for 2 or 3 days, a day, a week. Like we've talked about this before, me and you, where soft skills versus hard skills. Yeah. So I don't mean to upset anyone here, but the way I look at corporate training, leadership, communication, it's all soft skill stuff. Whereas I've been brought up on hard skills.
Yeah.
Like forklift, truck driving, EWPs, cranes, trades, all that kind of thing. So when I go to a training, I come away with a ticket.
Yeah.
Go to truck driving school, learn how to drive a truck, come back, I can go give it to my employer on the Friday. So there you go, I passed. And Monday morning, come back and drive truck down the road legally. May not be the best, maybe a bit rusty, especially when it comes to changing gears and some of the old boys, which is asked me about that at a different time. Still pretty bad. But so this is new to me in terms of not only learning the soft skills, but then being able to apply those into my life, my interactions with people, whether I've learned negotiations or leadership skills or communication skills or whatever I've learned. I need to then be able to, like you said, get those systems, pull parts out, recognize, not only apply them, but learn when to apply them and when I'm in that situation. So there's maybe we won't jump forward yet. Maybe we'll just stick with this for a little bit, where actually applying this stuff that you're learning. Giving people the direction and the confidence to be able to put these into use. Maybe the facilitator's got a big role to play in that as well.
1,000,000%. And this
jump forward a bit there, but we'll go back. Sorry, people.
That's absolutely perfect. Listen, I think you've just stumbled onto something there, which I think is a massive blind spot in training. I really do. I really, really do. And if there is maybe a unique selling point that I've been working on maybe for the last 2 years with my training is to remedy this. Now, your point is absolutely perfect there with regards to the hard skills versus what we call soft skills or personal or interpersonal skills. And where I see a lot of training happen is particularly facilitation. And the word facilitation often can be related to facilitating conversations. Okay. So I know there's a lot of people who are out there doing what I do, and they do it with the best of intentions. And their approach is facilitating conversations around what makes a good leader. And the good leader, and maybe you'd sit and have the conversation. It's like, okay, so as a good leader, what would you do? Well, you'd be confident. You'd be a visionary. You'd be seen as authentic. You'd be seen as approachable. You would be seen as charismatic. You'd be seen as holding people to account, seen as transparent, all of these different terms. And they'd all be thrown out. So now if I'm sitting in the audience, I could write down those 10 things, 10 characteristics I need to take on. But here, and that would be correct. Absolutely, I agree with that. But that is falling short. Because let's say, just for argument's sake, that we take on the aspect of being able to influence and persuade as a leader. That would be a component of leadership. But here's the problem. People don't know, and certainly trainers, in my not so humble opinion, need to get amongst this with regards to, okay, let's take inspiration. How do you actually inspire people? How do you inspire someone? As soon as I ask that question, it's just a mouthful of smiles. I don't know. So what we have to be able to do, and this is something I've gone out of my way to take all of these aspects and write almost cheat codes for the components that make that up, okay? That's what I've been looking for the whole time, because even something like active listening, and I'm feeling my own self getting worked up with this, active listening is common sense, but it's not common practice. Why? Because I believe that very often, as soon as negative emotion gets involved in a conversation, we stop listening to understand and start listening to fight to get our point across. So yes, you can say to somebody, as a good leader, be a good active listener, but they're not aware of the pitfalls that the human hardwiring has, and they're not aware of how to overcome that. So effectively, me saying just be a good active listener, yes, fine, but how do you actually do it? So what I've gone out to do is I've looked at all of these different elements. I've thought about, okay, these terms that we think about, we'll talk about leadership now, these terms that we list as characteristics of great leaders. How do we actually build them? So how do you actually build charisma? How do you actually build a presence? How do you actually be seen as approachable or be seen as authentic? How do you actually do that? How can you inspire people? Because here's the thing, cuz, unless people can break it down, have a systemized approach, the same way as you learn your hard skills with clutch in, change gears, slow release, that type of thing, then effectively people are none the wiser. And I've actually had a client say to me a few weeks ago, she was on one of my leadership courses, and she said to me, this is the first time, because her business invests a lot in training. She said to me, this is the first time I've ever been taught how to actually do these things. I've been at trainings before where the facilitator said, just be a better leader. And I've asked the question, well, how do I do that? And people look to me like I've got two heads. It's just like, and I get it. Now I can see this, but it's like I have to break all of these things down. And there was a client on Thursday who said this to me, and legend. He said to me, what you've taught here, I think I might have used some of this stuff accidentally in the past, but now I can use it intentionally because you've given me these steps, and I know I can use that same approach every single time. So it's this, and this is where I think this is why we're focusing on better outcomes, because if I can actually take these skill sets, break them down, and teach somebody how to actually utilize them, now you can use it intentionally. You're going to consistently get that better outcome. Confidence is another thing. Confidence. People don't know how to develop confidence in something other than just go through it again and again and again and again and again. So it takes you 32 years to have a good degree of professional self-esteem. It's like, listen, yes, 32 years you've got now that professional self-esteem in that role, beautiful. But I want my clients to be able to achieve that same level of confidence in 6 months. I want my clients to be seen as trustworthy and in rapport with people, with connection with them, in a fraction of the time it would normally take somebody else. And the way we do that is break it down, reverse engineer it, and teach it. And if we can do that, we can teach it in a way that people will not forget. It just makes it linear, it makes it structured, and you give them the structure, you give them an example, it's quite generic, then maybe you tell them the story. So you get the logical and you get the emotional aspect of it. And it's the outcomes that happen after are just phenomenal, man. They really are. They really are so beautiful. When you see people, and people actually start getting addicted to this addicted is the wrong word, but they start realizing what they're capable of when you start teaching in a way that opens these eyes. It's just beautiful to see, man. It really is.
Yes, exactly. But also the ones that I found most helpful, when we've talked about this before, well, the ones that I've found most helpful is when you end up in a situation accidentally, so to speak. Like you think negotiations.
Yeah.
When I guess the corporate world would have a different a negotiation, may be more set. Two companies coming together, two clients coming together, people coming together, sit down, thrash something out. In the construction industry, it can happen when someone else walks around the corner and goes, "Hey, I need this. This has happened.
Yeah.
Got to give me this." So all of a sudden you're thrust into the middle of it.
Yeah.
So you haven't got time to sit there and prepare the night before and get everything down for your meeting tomorrow at 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
You're in an instant. So that the strategies that if you're able to break it down into step by step and understand it. And like you said, sometimes people are doing this accidentally. They're doing stuff that they don't even realize.
Yes.
They do it naturally and they don't realize they're doing it. All of a sudden you shine a light on the fact they're doing it and they're like, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah.
So not only am I doing that, I'm missing these couple of steps before. If I bump those up a little bit, like you've kind of told them what they're lacking on, bump those up a bit, you actually use that to get that.
Yeah. 100%.
So it can be awesomely helpful. For preparation, you're already prepared. You've got to think all of a sudden you can understand where you are and go, "Oh, this is the next step."
We're starting to codify soft skills, my man. We're starting to codify soft skills.
Yeah.
Which overcomes the challenge of what makes it so difficult. Yes, you still have to deal with so many different personality types, but if you've got a consistent, repeatable type of approach that you can use intentionally, chances are you're going to get better outcomes than if you don't use them.
That's right. And if you can learn something in a linear fashion,
yeah,
very easy to skip steps depending on what's happening, where you start, because you may not always start at zero. It may not always start where you think it's going to start.
Yeah.
And that can help in terms of you can either, okay, well, we can skip to this part and carry on, or you're already at this part. You can say to them, "Hang on, we need to come back to here.
Yeah.
Cover these bases first, because if I don't cover these bases, that's going to, that's really going to affect the back end. So let's just take a second, wind it back and cover those well." You can do all this mentally because you know where you are on that line. Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. So it's quite, and I guess that would highlight not only what you're doing accidentally sometimes, because you've talked to me about this, how I can do stuff when I'm communicating that I didn't know that I was doing it until you told me what to do. And then okay, all right, well, I'll start using that and I get different outcomes. I actually use it, not like a superpower, but you actually think, "Oh, I can use that here."
Yeah, 100%.
So, and I guess that, to me, that helped highlight not only what I was good at, but also areas that I was lacking in. So I need to concentrate on that. Because if you've got that growth mindset, it's like, all right, well, I can do that now. What else can help push that to get a better outcome?
Absolutely, 100%. And here's the other thing, cuz, and this will probably bring into the next point, or the point we're going to touch on just now, is that human behavior that's rewarded is repeated. So if you see that one area that you can make improvements on, you make that slight improvement and you get a better outcome, it almost becomes like a self-reinforcing type of approach. Because it's like, "Oh my goodness, how good did I feel after that?" It was like, "Okay, cool.
Let's go again.
Let me keep doing it." Yeah, 100%.
That's it. So now, after you finish the training, gone through the amount of time, the days, whatever, the week, what kind of things should I concentrate on, especially with the soft skills we'll talk about here?
Yeah.
What are some of the stuff I need to do to make sure that I get the most out of that training and not just leave it in the classroom, so to speak?
Yeah. Okay. So there's a couple of facets to this. Firstly, what my strongest suggestion is to mark down 1, 2, or 3 things, probably no more than 3 things. Let's say you've taken 10 pieces of gold from the training and some big aha moments. and you've taken 10 pieces of learning, I would not say start with 10 new things that you're going to do. Start with 1, start with 2, start with at maximum 3 things, but 3 things that you write down that you're going to actually go out and actively do. So maybe you want to be able to influence and persuade better, or maybe you want to develop your own confidence, your professional self-esteem better. So that's going to be your focus. Maybe you want to be able to ask world-class questions. Whatever it is, write it down, and that's your area of focus. Because the thing is, with anything you learn, you're going to have that learning curve to start with. Once you get it up to a good level in your learning curve, it's not so steep anymore, and you're sort of managing it quite nicely, against some decent results, then you can go back to your notes and take your next one that you're going to build up to that level. Here's something I will say. Here's something that's very important, and I really hope this happens with all clients that go to training, is that the trainer or facilitator should communicate in a way where it becomes impossible to unsee certain things.
Yeah.
Okay. Unsee certain things. So there is one of the foundations I give my clients when I'm teaching them. One of the characteristics of a world-class communicator is this: they always meet their target audience at their target audience's view of the world. Okay. So if I walk past somebody in the street who's been on one of my courses, said, their view of the world, I'm hoping that everybody will be able to tell me exactly what that was. Now, the thing is, here's the thing. We make a bit of a joke about it, but the way I facilitate is I want to make sure that there's certain things that people can't unsee. And that would be a great example of it, which is meet your target audience at their view of the world. So we reiterate certain key foundations, certainly I do, in certain different contexts. So it hits that reticular activating system in slightly different ways. So what I believe to be absolutely foundational learning is something that is going to be held on to a lot more by the actual client. And here's what I normally find happens. I will always push, regardless of how much time I have with somebody. If I have 3 days of time with someone, I will put in 3-4 days worth of content in that, as long as I feel that I've got my audience where their brain is still not overwhelmed. Because you can tell when people's brains start to get overwhelmed. It's like, okay, that's too much. Let's stop here. Especially like if I've got a 3-day training, if I give 10 hours of learning in the first 6 hours, I know people are going to be a write-off for day 2 and day 3. Okay. Yeah. So it's my responsibility to make sure I can manage people as well, but I will always push as hard as I can to give them as much content, as much value as possible. And here's what happens. The brain starts to get some degree of overwhelm, and people sort of, exhausted when they leave, and they get to the end of day 2 or day 3, whatever it is, and they're exhausted, but they've had massive breakthroughs because their defenses have come down. There's been some meeting of the minds across the room, which is, again, is beautiful to see. But what tends to happen is after the workshop, a few days after the workshop, the mind starts to sort of settle down. So all the new learning start to settle down. And then if I've done my job to any degree of satisfaction for my clients, over the next few days, weeks, and months, there'll be little things that'll pop up, that'll catch their eye. It's like, oh my goodness, that guy with a weird accent was talking about that. We can use that here, and all of that kind of approach. And that is a big responsibility from my point of view to be able to do as a facilitator. Is I need to firstly weaken a lot of limiting beliefs that clients have, and we do that through reframing and some storytelling and reflections for them as well. But also start to reiterate what I believe to be absolutely fundamental strategies, techniques, understandings, insights, ways of thinking that is going to help clients get better outcomes. Because if I can do that, then they have skill sets that will serve them for the rest of their life,
Precisely. One tip I might add, especially when you talk about if you've got those 10 bits of gold and you want to concentrate on no more than 3.
Yeah.
If you are going for 1 or 2 or 3, try and make sure that they're connected. Work together and feed off each other in the same area.
Beautiful.
Because you don't want to choose 3 different things and spread your energy around too much.
Yeah.
So if you've got one thing, have a look through the other ones and see if there's anything that's similar or can help on that. And then work those 2 or those 3 or even just that one until you've got it. And then see what feeds off that. And as for not being able to unsee stuff, man, I hate when that happens. I really do. It's so annoying. When someone comes up and they tell you something and it shifts your mindset, it gets you Like, oh, really? I hate it because I know my brain is so curious now that
Yeah.
I've got hours of research ahead of me to go
Yeah.
and see and go down that rabbit hole and find out all the information I can about that.
Absolutely.
But I really, I mean, I say I hate it, but only in terms of I know how much extra workload it's going to give me. But really, I'm looking for that.
It's better than the
Looking,
alternative, mate. It's better than being bored, you know?
wouldn't know anymore. I don't do bored. I fall asleep way before I get bored. Too
Life's
old.
all about seasons, my friend. Life's
It
all
is.
about seasons.
It is. Um, Now the last one I want to finish off on is what are the parts that you enjoy most, Paulie? You've been doing this for a long time now. I've watched you a few times. I know all about your style and everything, but what are the parts of training and facilitating that you most enjoy? And like the feelings and stuff afterwards, after I know you're absolutely broken,
Yeah.
whether it's 2 days or five. Um, that's more about, squeezing the whole juice out and making sure the client gets everything. But so not so much the feelings of being absolutely broken, but talk to me about what you like the most about what you do, because you're obviously in love with it. And secondly, the feelings about afterwards and reflect on that.
Yeah, because I feel extraordinarily fortunate to do what I do, and maybe not fortunate, maybe blessed. Blessed is probably the right term, because I think the work I do. I mean, it's given me the opportunity to stay in Australia because with more than 500 clients providing recommendations, that was evaluated certainly by the Department of Home Affairs for my permanent residency and then citizenship. That's been awesome. That's been a big key for me to be able to stay here, which has been awesome. The thing is, I think that the work I have at the moment embraces the four things that are probably the most important things to me in life. Well, four of the most important things and things that I would probably do without being paid for. Firstly is doing business. And I have a very deep love of doing business. I really, really, really do. And I think it's the connection that you get with people. It's doing business, getting good outcomes, getting great outcomes, better outcomes, whatever, with people through deals, through business. It's awesome. Second thing is the desire to learn about business. So I'm learning all the time, and one of my excuses for learning all the time is so I've got better skill sets to teach my clients. So learning about business. Third thing is going out and teaching business. Okay, so actually going out, and I know that I've got information that could reduce suffering in the workplace environment. And again, suffering is a strong word, but I mean stress levels in the workplace environment, because I think confidence and the lack of skills to deal with challenging situations, I think that causes a lot of stress for people. And then fourthly is seeing clients being successful. You see, I mean, literally every day going onto LinkedIn, I'm seeing, clients that I've worked with in the past getting promotions and stuff like that. And those four things together are absolutely phenomenal. They really are. What makes me very, very, very happy in life. It's also with facilitating. I mean, I'm standing for 6, 7, 8 hours a day. You're moving, and you've got to be physically, mentally, and emotionally present with everybody. You've got to be able to pick up the smallest little physiological reaction in somebody, like a quick reaction, which is an aha moment. You've got to be able to facilitate that. You've got to see that. If somebody's not quite aligned with you, you have to pick up on that as well. So you've got to be fully present where we're going with this. But you get to the end of and I'm standing up, I'm walking, I don't have screen time because I'm obviously not looking at the screen. So I think that's quite a healthy way to do it. It's good to fast during those days as well. So that's pretty healthy as well. I like walking, drink a lot of water as well. So I think that's quite healthy, better than sort of sitting down and just sort of sitting at my desk and what have you. But then I think that the greatest feeling, mate, the greatest feeling is if you've been through a marathon. I mean, you've been through a 2 days, and 2 days could be a long day, but a long time. But there was times I do 5 days back to back, for 5 days back to back. You get to that Monday to Friday, you get to Friday afternoon, Friday evening, and all you do that week is you work, you come home, you have dinner, you shower, you go to bed. You do that the whole week. You do nothing else. There's no jiu-jitsu, there's no gym, there's no going out for drinks with your mates, nothing like that. It's you're straight down there. That's all you're focusing on. But you get to that Friday afternoon, and the invoice will be paid. The feedback clients, the client feedback is through the roof. They are ecstatic with what's happened, and you are physically spent. And I think that when you're physically spent in something, I think there's a reward that comes with that. I know Vince Lombardi once said there's no greater feeling than lying on the field of battle, totally and utterly exhausted but victorious. And that's something that is very important to me, is the ability to leave it all there. You know, if I'm feeling exhausted, I got to keep pushing, because I know that there could be something else I could share that could really improve this client's life. And if I just start going through the motions and getting them to do all the exercises and not add anything of value, then it's like I kind of feel like I'm cheating somebody, you know. And I can't do that, because as soon as I leave there, it's just this feeling, and you're in the room and you clean the room up and you're wiping down the whiteboards, and you know you've done well. You know you've given something of value to the clients. And from a job satisfaction point of view, I mean, you know, I don't know how many people can have that degree of job satisfaction. I'm sure potentially you can, when you see what you guys put up there and what have you, and you do that hard work, those hard yards, and you know, the camaraderie that you see between people when they've gone through something difficult and they've had those breakthroughs together. It's almost like a spiritual connection, without sounding too woo-woo here, but it's good, man. I'm very happy, very, very happy. Sometimes, you know, you're so exhausted physically, mentally, and emotionally, you can't get to sleep because your brain's still going at a million miles an hour, and you try to bring yourself down, whether that's a cold shower or what have you, because, you know, you're not going to use anything else to sort of bring you down, breathing exercises and stuff. But yeah, it's a great job, and you know, sometimes you just feel you're in the right place, and that's certainly how I'm fortunate enough, blessed enough to be in that situation.
Geez, that sounds pretty awesome, man. Like, you're on your hours, eat for 8 hours a day, get up, go to work, come home, eat dinner, shower, sleep. That sounds like a pretty cruisy week as a construction worker, mate. You get to Friday and you're so mentally exhausted, you got to ring your mate because you locked yourself out of your house. Sounds tough.
Yeah, one time in 5 years, brother. There we go. It's not a bad strike rate.
It's all right. We at least we had the ability to realize it was going to happen and plan ahead. Yeah,
absolutely.
No, I all due credit, I've watched you in action over the years, and I kind of likened it. First time I watched it, I couldn't believe it, because it was more like you're an actor. Actually, the amount of energy that you were giving out, and your presence, you were walking around, the way you delivered, how engaged you were with people. I wasn't expecting that, because I've never seen that in any other trainers before, any training I've done. Okay. So completely different from what I'd ever experienced. So I could fully understand why you're broken. Yeah. So hats off to you. I was just happy you were locked out of your apartment with some food and water. Liquid, not water. And I was able to rescue you. So thank you for this. I think there's some very good insights into what people should be looking for in return on investment. Sorry I haven't been able to contribute much. I will promise to stay away from getting choked out by a shin, at least for another, about 4 days.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, thank you very much. Good insights in that one. Thank you,
mate. I appreciate you being on the journey, and yeah, thanks for your time as well.
No worries. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for all the feedback. Thanks for all the love. We've got a lot more of these coming up. We're going to get Paulie to try and show us some of these systems, give us a little bit of a peek behind the curtain. Maybe we can teach you to break down some of these active listening or be inspirational.
So we can make a plan, bro. Yeah, fantastic. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, everyone. See you next week.
Thanks, folks. Take care. Cheers.